I'd love to do a little bit of speculation and theories before we
Okay.
call it a day.
Okay.
So first, the Flag Smashers, they seem to have people everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Including, as we saw, within the council security, right? So do you see this movement, if we're going to call it that, playing a part in the MCU moving forward? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I do. I think it like intermittently we'll see them again. There may be other people that take the cause up and sort of take it further. With Carly being gone and some of all of the original 4 or 5. I think there is like I said, Marvel does a fantastic job of giving themselves breathing room, right? So the one guy that Sam goes at the end to fish out of the river, maybe he gets away. And maybe he's able to go and, sort of ignite another fire. And I think Carly says it at one point in the episode that, even if we die, the movement's strong enough to sort of keep going. Right. Yeah. So I do think that we will see them, even if it's, just little one-off shots or news clippings about, this Flag Smasher thing here, this Flag Smasher thing there. And right. I'm sure we may even see their cause become more and more, violent. Like we may see another villain at some point that takes it a bit further than even Carly would have. Or maybe we see Sharon's character, sort of take the movement over now, and use it, to because she's gonna have that inside hand, inside the U.S. government. So maybe she takes it and uses it to her. Her vices to, figure out whatever kind of cool stuff they've got going on she doesn't have access to.
I didn't even think about that, but that seems like something she would do as power broker.
It does.
Right?
Yeah, it does.
I wouldn't even be surprised if we get to see them, like, just little hints of them or something, like in the next couple shows that are coming out, like She-Hulk and Armor Wars and all that. Like that could be a possibility. That's interesting. So, Here's one that I've been thinking about. Like, do you see do you think it's possible Isaiah could come back in a future movie or show? Because like I could see something where, in like a movie or something coming up down the line where it's like, you remember that moment in Civil War where Sam and Steve are on the run with Bucky and they're like, crap, what do we do? We need backup. And Sam's like, I think I know a guy, and he's talking about Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Do you think could be like something like that where they kind of pull him in and he's, maybe not excited about it, but he decides to show up and, help out? Or like, do you think he'll be more of like a, in the background type of a character?
So I think there are 2 ways that we maybe see him again, right? One way for sure we'll definitely see him again, right? I think one of the ways that we could see him again is I do believe that his grandson Eli will eventually have some of his abilities passed on to him. In the comics, he gets his grandfather's abilities via a blood transfusion, right? So I do think that's a way that we're going to end up having to see him. I think, we'll see, however they decide to, implement the Young Avengers in the MCU, I think we'll see him in that regard. I do think tragically that something could happen to him. I think that maybe something happens to him. And so we see, him in that way, sort of like in wrestling, they have the terms of like baby faces and heels, and you have to give somebody the rub. So maybe, in order for the MCU to establish a new villain and to establish the base for hate for a new villain, we see them kill a lot, we see them kill him, so I think that that's something that we could see too. I don't know if we see him in action unless it's a flashback, because he is a pretty old guy now, and I think they keep things fairly, unless it's one of those scenes like, I don't know if you remember, like, but back when like the Avengers were having the showdown in New York and stuff, and everybody was just like, just show us a 5-second clip of the Netflix Marvel people, fighting people off, on like the street, So if there's like another massive invasion angle and they're showing people around the world dealing with it, I think we could see like a shot of like, Isaiah's street, and he's just like beating the crap out of like these CGI aliens or something like
a monster
that.
comes down and he's like, boom.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, did you really just land in my garden? Okay.
You don't mess with Isaiah's garden.
Yeah. So I don't think that could happen at all, but it would be a cool thing to see down the road. But I think the only way we see Isaiah Bradley going further is if it's got something to do with his grandson, Eli.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I have heard some, rumors about maybe some Young Avengers, so that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so now Contessa Valentina, blah, 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 Pellegrino.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering about her because, so do you think that she, like, who's she working with or for? Like, do you think it's like a Hydra thing? Do you think she's working with Sharon? Do you think it's her own enterprise? Do you think it's she's more connected to like maybe like Ross or the CIA and the Thunderbolts, or like, what do you think is the deal with her and her connection with Walker?
So, when you have an actress as big as JLD, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, this woman is arguably one of the most decorated, television actresses of all time, right? So I don't think you bring somebody like her in to just have them be a sub to Thunderbolt Ross or to be a right. sub to Sharon, right? I think that she is a Nick Fury level character, right? Oh. So I think that maybe she runs her own organization. Maybe she works parallel to like a Thunderbolt Ross, and maybe later once they establish her a bit more, she works parallel to somebody like a Sharon. I don't know what organization per se. I mean, we've done the Hydra thing, a lot. So maybe there's a new organization. Now, I could see her working hand in hand with Doom, if they plan to introduce Dr. Doom to the MCU, right? I could see that, I haven't made a decision yet as to whether or not if she's going to be like an anti-hero sort of character, or if she's just like a, by any means necessary sort of character. Like Thunderbolt Ross, he's not necessarily a villain, he's a dick, but he's not a villain, right? Right. But when Thanos shows up, he doesn't want, he wants the world to live, right? So I think that she'll work more in that vein. I think she'll be a character that by any means necessary, she wants to get things done. But organization wise, she is Madam Hydra in the comics. She does end up being a Russian sleeper agent. We could see Leviathan. We could see the group Leviathan. So maybe now that I think about it, I think it's Leviathan. I think the group that she's working for is Leviathan. Maybe it's another take on Hydra, or maybe it's sort of that morphed into something else. But I think it's going to be a new group that won't be Hydra.
Do you think I don't know anything about Leviathan, but do you think there's any possibility that she's like going to be involved in putting together like a Dark Avengers team, or like is that?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So okay. I don't know if they'll have Thunderbolts and Dark Avengers. I think they'll have one of the two. So I think that she will be involved in the Thunderbolts. And that's the whole thing with her working hand in hand with Ross down the road.
But
I don't
not
think
necessarily like his subordinate or something.
Yeah, no, not his subordinate. I think she's higher than him. So, but maybe since she's the one giving John Walker his legs and his new platform, maybe Thunderbolt Ross goes to her to borrow, or maybe like just kind of use John Walker from time to time for his means.
Interesting.
But
so
yeah, I think
manager.
that's where. Yeah, basically. Yeah, she'll be his manager.
That's cool. Okay, so let's talk about Sharon for a minute. So she's obviously talking on the phone to somebody. Now, do you think that was just her like minion, or do you think that she has like a partner in crime? Or like, what do you, in other words, what do you think is up with her and what her ultimate goals are?
So, if you think about the scene back where, they go over to Madripoor, and they're seeing a person in the back room and the person gets shot, right? And the sniper, I think that the sniper was her driver that we later see in that episode, where she comes around the corner. She's like, hey, we got a new problem. I'll tell you about it. I just assumed that person, that was the person she was talking to.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, again, the MCU giving themselves breathing room to later come up with something else.
Yeah.
You know, it could be a bigger big bad, you know, that we don't exactly know about yet.
Yeah. On that note, I have a theory. I want to get your thoughts on it.
Okay.
I think there's a decent chance that Sharon in this is actually a Skrull. Because part of that comes from me like thinking, is this really who Sharon is? You know, to where, I mean, you know, she's been through a lot and she's been kind of hung out to dry for the better part of a decade and like all this stuff. But like, is it also possible that she's a Skrull and she's going about the business of like setting up the secret invasion in some way? Like, do you think that's plausible at all? Or what do you think about that?
I do think that's plausible, right? Because in the comics, Secret Invasion is like it's this just ridiculous. It's this ridiculous thing of just crazy magnitude, right? Like the Skrulls have invaded every single aspect of our society. So, you know, if they want to relay that in the MCU the proper way, hey, you know, have Sharon be a Skrull, you know, end all of your Disney Plus shows, you know, with a Skrull you coming out, right? And we've already seen that in WandaVision, you know, so I like that. I hadn't really put too much thought into that, but yeah, Sharon could be a Skrull, right? Because to me, I don't really like the idea of this person coming from the lineage of Peggy Carter, right? Agent Carter, you know, they had, you know, I mean, Haley Atwell had her own season. You know, if Disney Plus was around a few years ago, Agent Carter would have been on Disney Plus, right? So I mean, to come from that lineage to end up, you know, falling out, you know, and becoming the power broker, I think that's not necessarily the route. I would have wanted to see her character grow, but you know, if she is a Skrull, then hey, you know, that could be. And when you think about it, Fury does have Skrulls at his employ, right? You know, it was Fury that had Sharon Carter acting as Kate in Winter Soldier as Cap's neighbor, right? So why would we believe that Fury, now being in space, why would we believe that he would just leave one of his loyal agents out to dry? You know,
Right.
So I do like that theory. I'm gonna really put some thought into that. I'm so happy you brought that up.
Let me know if you come up with anything on that. But I just thought, plus, you know, to your point earlier where you said, you know, they're all like Feige and them are always thinking so far ahead. Like they already announced the Secret War show coming up, right?
And
so you got to think that they might be like sprinkling some breadcrumbs on their way up to that. So. You know,
I'm incredibly excited for that, man. You know, now that they've announced that Emilia Clarke's going to be in it, you know.
That's right. Yeah,
it's going to be awesome. You know.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, I love me some Sam Jackson, so I'm looking forward to seeing him come back on that. So okay, so do you? Okay, here's my last big question, which is, do you have any knowledge of anything from the comics that might give us an idea of where we're headed after this show? I know that the comics aren't always like one-to-one with the shows and everything, but I'm just wondering if there's anything that you get from the comics that you think, oh, they might be heading into this, or just like anything.
So where I think we're going, with my knowledge of the comics is, I think that we are going to see Sam continue to be a grounded, domestic, local, neighborhood Captain America. I do think we're going to see a lot more of that, right? I also think that his presence in a post-blip secret invasion America is going to be very important, right? Because, you know, with this new Avengers team coming up, and, you know, with the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman, right, you know, who's going to lead the new group of Avengers, right? Yeah. You know, I mean, a lot of people would assume that it's going to be Captain Marvel. And I don't know if she's been received that well in the MCU fandom, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people would assume it would be Doctor Strange. But sometimes the issue with when you lock down these big, huge actors for these roles, you can't keep them, right? I mean, how much longer is a guy like Benedict Cumberbatch going to stick around in the MCU? I mean, you know, he's one of the top 20 working actors in the world right now, right?
Yeah.
So and Brie Larson, you know, I mean, she's an award winning actress. You know, how much longer are you going to be able to keep her around, right?
Yeah.
So they're giving themselves all of these back doors. You know, okay, so if Brie Larson is going to leave, well, in the comics, Monica Rambeau was the first Captain Marvel, right? You know, and if you know, and if Doctor Strange is going to take off, okay, well, you still got Baron Mordo, you know, and Wong's kind of a likable character. You know, and I don't know as much about the Doctor Strange comics, but I'm sure there's somebody there that, you know, they could also move up to that role. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see how they position the Captain America character going into Secret Invasions. But I think that in his film, in the next Captain America film, we will start to see some of that bleed over. We're going to start to see, you know, we're going to start to see, okay, what's happening, why are all these people that we think act one way acting another way. And, you know, what's the line that Sam and Bucky have in the beginning of the show? They're like, you know, the big three, you know, you got wizards, you got aliens,
androids, and wizards or whatever.
yeah. You know, I really can't wait for the moment where, you know, like, oh man, okay, now it's the big four. You know, we got well, no, I guess Skrulls will fall under aliens. So, you know, this is another big three moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny because that was like true what he said. They are fighting that stuff a lot. Yeah, I mean,
that's it.
I mean, it's interesting, and you know, I had read a couple rumors about like that the new Captain Marvel movie, Captain Marvel 2, coming up, is going to be a very sort of like almost Avengers level movie, similar to the way that like movies like Civil War were, where you have a crossing over of a lot of the characters from the other franchises, right? And it may not be an Avengers movie per se, but you still have a lot of those characters in it, you know. And for anybody watching this, we actually did a Captain Marvel 2 sequel pitch on our audio-only podcast.
Oh, man, awesome.
Late last year. Yeah, check it out. We had a couple guests on. It was one of my favorite episodes that we've done, actually. It was really fun.
Okay.
We did a few like sequel pitch episodes. We did Terminator. We did Captain Marvel 2. We did Alien franchise. And then at Christmas time we did what if there was a Marvel Star Wars crossover movie? What would that look like? So I just thought of it now because we were talking about Captain Marvel 2. But those are really fun.